Dr. Virendra Kumar,
Yes, ma'am.
please start the lecture.
Okay. Good morning, viewers. I bring warm greetings from Steel City of South India, that is Bellary. Postpartum hemorrhage is a nightmare. It contributes to lot of maternal deaths, especially in developing countries. All said and done, we know that obstetrics is a bloody business. For many, Taj Mahal is a sign of love, but not for obstetricians. It is a symbol of tragedy as far as obstetrics is concerned. PPH is still continues to be a major problem even in 21st century. We are living in the shadow of Taj Mahal. The majority of these deaths occur within 4 hours of delivery. Probably PPH accounts for nearly 40% of all maternal deaths. And death from hemorrhage, what is important is, can definitely be avoided. All of you know that PPH is generally defined as blood loss greater than or equal to 500 ml within 24 hours. However, severe PPH is blood loss greater than or equal to 1000 ml within 24 hours. Many times in our practice, we see this kind of severe PPH. Only thing is, because our patients are young and fit, they are able to tolerate this much amount of blood loss. This picture, what you are seeing, is a picture of Joyce Bonda. She is a Malawian president. In her words, when I gave birth to my fourth child, I suffered from PPH. I almost lost my life. I was lucky to be under the care of trained healthcare personnel. Then she started thinking and she wondered what may be happening to rural women. After that, she took a lot of steps to decrease maternal mortality in her country. 3 steps to PPH, postpartum hemorrhage, PPH. P
Hello.
means, hello? Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello?
Sir, continue.
Yeah. The 3 steps to PPH. What is important is we have to predict PPH. We have to be prepared for PPH. When these two are there, you can definitely handle PPH. So PPH acronym means predict, prepare, and handling the hemorrhage. All of you know how to predict PPH. I don't want to elaborate. Just I want to say that multifetal gestations, prolonged labor, polyhydramnios, prolonged use of oxytocin, cesarean delivery can result in PPH. So what is important is you should learn to predict PPH in certain cases. Cause of postpartum hemorrhage. There are primary cause and secondary causes. Of most importance is uterine atony. And in secondary causes, retained products and uterine infection. 80% of the cases of PPH are due to uterine atony. In this talk, I am going to mainly concentrate on atonic PPH. All said and done, it can be predicted, it can be anticipated, but most often expect PPH in the most unexpected situation. When you are predicting the PPH, you are already prepared in high-risk pregnancies. But most often, we see PPH in most unexpected situation. So you should have preparedness to tackle such postpartum hemorrhage. Prevention of PPH, we have to identify predisposing factors. Most important is treat anemia. Make the patient fit and stable for any possible PPH. So anemia treatment is very important. Be prepared. The second P in PPH refers to be prepared. Perhaps the most important aspect in the management of PPH is the attitude of the attendant in charge. It is critical to maintain calm and composure in what can be a chaotic and stressful environment. So being prepared for possible catastrophic event is more important than handling it. So PPH is an emergency which can kill fast a woman within 4 to 5 hours. So this is called as golden hour. So we have to be ready and be prepared. The acronym IDEA, I means infrastructure preparedness. You ask yourself whether your infrastructure is geared up to tackle such situation. D for drugs and injections and IV fluids. E for emergency trays and trolleys. And A, altogether, staff and teamwork is most important in the management of PPH. So IDEA, you should have better idea to manage PPH. Infrastructure is very important. We spend a lot of money on non-essential things, but as far as PPH is concerned, you must see that our infrastructure is able to handle the catastrophic event. The proper suction machine, proper light, a good labor table, trolleys, all those things, very important. What is important is many times I've seen people struggle to get a carboprost or they struggle to get methazine because it is misplaced. So better all of us should maintain a drug kit which contains all the essential drugs to tackle PPH. So I request all the members to have a plastic box wherein all these drugs are readily available, which may contain IV cannula, crystalloids, bisoprostol, methadone, carboprost in sufficient quantities, and it should be kept in a easily accessible place like a refrigerator in the labor room. Emergency trays. You must have crash cart. Emergency trolley must be there, and essential drugs must be easily available. Then only you can easily and effectively manage PPH. Once you predict, once you are prepared, you can definitely handle a case of postpartum hemorrhage. So PPH may occur in women without identifiable clinical or historical risk factors. So in this regard, the WHO, FIGO, and International Confederation of Midwives have advocated active management of the third stage of labor. So point to be noted here is active management of third stage of labor is known to all the obstetricians, but we must see that this is taught to our paramedical workers. So it must be offered to all women during childbirth to prevent PPH. So once again, all of you know all these components of AMTSL. I don't want to stress it, but for the sake of completion, the first component of AMTSL is administration of uterotonic soon after the birth of the baby. Even patient is receiving IV infusion of oxytocin, it is a better practice to give 10 units of intramuscular oxytocin as soon as baby is delivered. The second component of AMTSL is delayed cord clamping, that is, you clamp the cord between 1 to 3 minutes, except in some situations. And you must deliver the placenta by controlled cord traction, followed by uterine massage. So these are the three components of AMTSL. What are the benefits of AMTSL? We know that uterine atony accounts for 70 to 90% of all PPH cases. AMTSL reduces incidence of PPH by 60%. A simple measure like AMTSL can reduce PPH by 60%. Point to be noted. Most important is all of us are very much aware of all the uterotonics, but we must teach our paramedical workers to practice AMTSL. So what are the WHO recommendations on use of uterotonics? To effectively prevent PPH, only one of the following uterotonics should be used. So using multiple drugs is a different situation, is a different aspect. To prevent PPH, WHO recommends to use any one of the following uterotonics, like either you can use the oxytocin, carbetocin, which I'm going to elaborate a little later, misoprostol, where oxytocin is safely not available, you can use 600 microgram of misoprostol, or you can use methyl ergometrin, or a fixed combination of oxytocin 5 units plus 0.5 milligram of ergometrin can be used. Oxytocin is a long, it has played a long innings in the management of PPH. Even now, it is the current standard of care. It can be given IM or infusion. 5 to 10 units can be added in 500 ml of crystalloid. A point to be noted is the maximum unit we can use in a day is 40 units. If you go beyond this, the chances of water intoxication is high. Intravenous, almost it acts immediately and it reaches peak concentration within 30 minutes. However, if you give IM, slower onset of action, it takes nearly 7 minutes to produce its full effects, but it produces long lasting clinical effect up to 1 hour. Oxytocin has short plasma half-life. Continuous IV infusion is required in LSCS. Side effects, rapid IV bolus to be avoided because it can cause hypertension. And if you go beyond 40 units, then it can cause water intoxication. Most important aspect of oxytocin is to have a better effect, it must be stored in 2 to 8 degrees centigrade to prolong its shelf life. And you know, in India, most of the centers do not have proper refrigerator facility. Even if it is there, the paramedical people are not aware it is kept in open area. As a result, oxytocin becomes ineffective and we blame oxytocin for failing to control PPH. So it requires protection from light. These two things are to be remembered while treating PPH. If it is properly stored, definitely it produces a very good contraction of the uterus. If it is not there, it may be ineffective. And you know that oxytocin was banned in 2018 by central government because of the misuse of oxytocin in dairy industry. However, many private companies went against the ban of government of India. Then Delhi High Court studied all the matters regard to oxytocin and it passed the ban on sale of oxytocin by private drug makers. Later on in 2018 August, Center went to Supreme Court seeking ban on production of oxytocin. It challenged the verdict given by Delhi High Court. However, the ban is temporarily lifted. Supreme Court has referred the decision to a larger bench. We hope the sanity prevails among the policymakers, and because it can save life of a mother, we should not ban oxytocin. Government should be more strict in banning use of oxytocin by dairy industry. Then the another very important drug is methergine. So it can be given IM or slow IV. 0.2 milligram to be repeated every 15 minutes, followed by 4th hourly. So maximum we can give only 5 doses. You can give 5 doses. IV onset of action within 1 minute. It starts within 30 to 45 seconds, lasting for 45 minutes. IM it takes nearly 2 to 3 minutes. So when oxytocin is not acting, definitely you can use methergine. You have to consider the contraindication like hypertension and heart disease. Again, methergine needs to be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. The major disadvantage of oxytocics is they need to be stored in 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Then carboprost. It is 15-methyl PGF2 alpha. It can be given IM or intramyometrial. WHO says that if you are giving intramyometrial, it is the decision of the physician with regard to control of PPH. So most often many people use intramuscular. However, when it is failing to control PPH, one can use intramyometrial. That is, you take 1 ml of carboprost, dilute in 4 ml of water. You can be given near both the cornal end. If in vaginal delivery also during cesarean section, because the uterus is directly available, accessible, it can be given through under direct vision. In normal deliveries, you can give through transabdominally through the skin. The dose is 250 milligram. It can be given once in 15 minutes. Unlike methergine, it can be given once in 15 minutes, whereas methergine needs to be given once in 4 hours. The maximum dose is 8 doses. So up to 8 doses of carboprost can be given. The onset of action starts within 15 to 60 minutes. Half-life is 8 minutes. Contraindication is bronchial asthma. Suppose if you don't ask this history and patient may have severe bronchospasm necessitating intubation. Again, the storage to be effective, it has to be stored under 4 degrees centigrade. Injectable prostaglandins are not recommended for the prevention of PPH per WHO. But in practice, in high risk cases, we use prostaglandin as a primary drug. But as per recommendation is concerned, it is not used as a primary drug for prevention. It is used to treat PPH, but not for prevention of PPH. However, those who are well versed in using carboprost as a primary drug in prevention, still it can be used. And most important is you teach your paramedical people to not to give IV because it can be fatal. Misoprostol is a synthetic analog, dose 400 to 600 microgram. Maximum dose we can use is 1000 microgram, and half-life is 20 to 4 minutes, and it is absorbed by either sublingual, oral, vaginal, rectal use. No clear evidence which route is superior or which dose is superior. Maximum tolerated dose of misoprostol is up to 600 microgram. If you use 800 microgram, the chance of side effects are more. The most common side effect is shivering as well as fever. After giving misoprostol, especially after 1 to 2 hours, patient can be febrile. You need not mistake it for sepsis. Among all the iterotonics, misoprostol is stable at room temperature. That's why it is highly useful in rural areas. Now, carbetocin may be a game changer in the coming years. It is sold as Duratocin. The rate of the carbetocin is varies from 18 euros to 40 euros, approximately 1500 rupees to 3400 rupees. Very expensive, especially in a country like India. It is a patented drug researched and developed by Ferring company. However, the company has committed to the WHO to make the product available in the market at the same price as oxytocin. If this commitment is fulfilled by Ferring, then definitely lot of lives of mothers can be saved. So what is carbetocin? It is a newer molecule. It is a newer iterotocin. It is a heat stable formulation. It is long acting. Unlike oxytocin, it is long acting. It is a synthetic octopeptide analog of oxytocin. Mode of action is it binds to oxytocin receptors in the uterine smooth muscles, resulting in rhythmic contractions, increase frequency of existing contractions, and increases the uterine tone, something similar to oxytocin. The dose is IV bolus. It has to be given IV bolus over 100 microgram, and it acts within 2 minutes. Unlike oxytocin or methadone, it is fast acting and also long acting. Sustained uterine contraction within 2 minutes, lasting for about 66 minutes, and followed by rhythmic contraction for 60 minutes. It can also be given IM. Again, IM lasts for almost 2 hours. So only one dose is recommended, that is 100 microgram of carbetocin. The peak concentration is reached within 30 minutes. Longer half-life, it is almost 80 to 90 minutes, 80% is available. Carbetocin, as I told earlier, it is intended for only single administration. No further dose of carbetocin should be administered. It is a heat stable formulation and does not require cold chain transport. This is the most important fascinating factor about carbetocin. It does not require cold chain transport. Can stay at room temperature for a long period. For example, if it is stored at 30 degrees centigrade, the stability is maintained for 3 years. At 40 degrees centigrade for 6 months. At 50 degrees centigrade for 3 months, and 60 degrees centigrade for 1 month. Most of the room temperature is around 30, less than 35 degrees centigrade. So even if it is not refrigerated, definitely we'll have a effective iterotonic at our disposal. Carbetocin has similar desirable effects compared with oxytocin, though it may likely to be superior to oxytocin in reducing PPH of at least 500 ml. All the trials have pointed that except for cost factor, it is superior to oxytocin. So based on the WHO champion trial, the champion trial is the trial which used carbetocin. Carbetocin is recommended for PPH prevention, especially in those settings where the cold storage of oxytocin is not possible. That means almost all countries which are low or middle income or developing countries fit into this criteria, because cold storage is definitely not possible in most of the parts of India. See, carbetocin is overcoming the heat barrier to prevent postpartum hemorrhage. 99% of the cases of PPH are occurring in low and middle income countries. And to be effective, oxytocin needs to be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. And in developing countries, only 22% of the facilities have proper refrigerator facility. And most often, the medicines are exposed to nearly 40 degrees centigrade. And as a result, many of the women are dying of not receiving effective oxytocin. And only 1 in 4 healthcare personnel are aware of the refrigerator to be refrigerated. And we know that in our pharmacies, to save current, they switch off the refrigerator in the night. And most often oxytocin is found in the room temperature. So all this barrier can definitely be overcome by carbetocin. Another medical agent which is used is tranexamic acid. So tranexamic acid is an antifibrinolytic agent, and it is used in elective surgeries, and it is said that it reduces the need of blood transfusion by nearly 40%. WHO recommendation as far as tranexamic acid is concerned: tranexamic acid may be offered as a treatment for PPH only if oxytocin followed by second line treatment options and prostacyclin has failed, or it is thought that bleeding may also be due to traumatic PPH. So definitely there is a role of tranexamic acid when oxytocin fail to control PPH. Again, another interesting medical agent which is used in PPH is recombinant factor 7A. It involves enhancement of rate of thrombin generation, and the thrombin generated by 7A is resistant to premature lysis. It is effective in severe obstetric hemorrhage. The recombinant factor 7A could be life-saving, but its high rates of thrombotic events may also be noted. So it cannot be used as a primary or secondary agent. In severe cases where facilities are available, where patient can afford, definitely recombinant factor 7A can be given. And it is a very expensive, and the cost is nearly 20,000 to 30,000 rupees. So most neglected part in hemorrhage is not recognized by many of us, because obstetricians do not usually correctly estimate the blood loss. Blood loss is underestimated because of pregnancy signs of hypovolemia do not show until the losses are large. Mother can lose up to 30 to 35% of the circulating blood volume, that is nearly 2 liters of blood, before developing signs of hypovolemia. This makes us not to recognize the hemorrhagic shock. So you must be very vigilant as far as PPH is concerned. And important is slow trickle can be sometimes fatal because it is not taken into consideration. And most deaths of hemorrhage occur after 5 hours. So management of PPH, once it is identified, communication, resuscitation, arrest the bleeding, and monitoring must occur simultaneously. Initial steps of PPH, all of you know, you have to empty the bladder, because the full bladder can interfere with uterine contractions. The first and foremost important in PPH is you have to empty the bladder. Give oxytocin, and again check for placental completeness to rule out genital tract injury. Massage of the uterus is a continued component of PPH management. Sometimes it may not be practiced in low risk pregnancies. However, in PPH, you should continue to massage the uterus till blood is available or uterus is contracted. Bimanual compression, aortic compression, uterine tamponade, these are all very much essential before resorting to surgical intervention. Dr. Ashish Kubde is going to speak on uterine tamponade. Estimation of the blood loss. Visual estimation is very poor because it underestimates the blood loss by nearly 50%. And clinical symptoms, change in clinical status may lag behind blood loss. And to counter this, one must adopt PPH bags. So it is very inexpensive. You can get nearly for 50 to 100 rupees PPH bags. And it also provides a very clean and neat platform to deliver. So PPH bags are recommended. It helps in providing the neat area for delivery and also allows all the blood which is lost during delivery to be collected in the pouch. So our own Devdas has produced bags. It is called as Devdas bag. A pictorial guide to blood loss at obstetric hemorrhage. It must be shown to all our paramedical people. Example, soiled sanitary towel. A small size, it can up to 30 ml. Whereas incontinence pad, if it is soaked, it is almost 250 ml. And if the kidney tray is full, the blood loss can be 500 ml. So this pictorial guide must be placed in our labor room so that our paramedical people are definitely aware of the amount of blood loss. Or else you can use QMAT, blood collection mat. They are easily available. It is named after the lead scientist Muhammad Abdul Khayyam. It's placed under a woman immediately after the delivery of a baby. The mat can retain nearly 500 ml of blood and it is soaked. It is a visual representation that already the hemorrhage is started. Bimanual compression, I will not elaborate, all of you know, need to be practiced apart from uterotonics. Then compression of the abdomen aorta is a very important step. Apply downward pressure with the closed fist over abdominal aorta directly through the abdominal wall. With the other hand, you must palpate femoral pulse to check adequacy of compression. So pulse palpable means you are applying inadequate pressure. If the femoral pulse is not palpable, that means you have adequate pressure is given to the aorta. So in a way, you are reducing the blood supply to the uterus until bleeding is controlled. So compression of the aorta and bimanual compression should be practiced continuously till uterus is contracted. Signs in hemorrhagic shock. All of you know, but I want to highlight because these signs can develop later. We may be little complacent. Pallor, confusion, increased heart rate is the first sign. Reduced BP is the late sign. These two things you must keep in mind. One should not look for hypertension in PPH. If you are looking for hypertension, means already the situation is very grave. Patient may go into downhill course. Tachypnea, cold, clammy extremities, reduced urine output, or obvious or hidden bleeding may be there. So severity of the shock, when 15 to 25% of the blood is lost, then there will be tachycardia. And you will see hypertension when more than 25% of the blood loss is seen. So what you have to remember is a fit woman who has delivered recently will not usually decompensate until 35% of the total blood volume has been lost. So this you must remember always. Don't look for hypertension or tachycardia because it may be a late sign. Here you have to remember rule of 30 and shock index. When more than 30% is blood loss, patient will have moderate shock. When the pulse rate is more than 30 blood pressure beats per minute, respiratory rate more than 30, systolic blood pressure drop by 30 millimeter of mercury, urine output is less than 30, hematocrit drop more than 30%. So all this indicates that patient may be in shock. And shock index, very important, pulse rate divided by systolic blood pressure. The normal value of shock index is 0.5 to 0.7. If it is more than 0.9, it indicates state of shock that needs urgent resuscitation. So shock index will be a useful clinical index to categorize the patient whether they are in shock or not. Once acute postpartum blood loss is there, we have to restore the volume, give crystalloids, continue to supplement the oxygen by nasal oxygen or face mark, and to increase the oxygen carrying capacity, we have to start transfusion. So crystalloid infusion, oxygen supplementation, and transfusion are very important to combat PPH. Fluid resuscitation is very important component apart from using ultrasonics. How much fluid and how fast we must give. Volume, we must transfuse 3 times the estimated loss. So if the blood loss is 1, you must go at least 3 times the estimated blood loss. So in our practice, we are not following this. We are giving very little. Suppose if the patient is in shock, that means she has already lost 2 liters of blood. Then we have to give almost 5 to 6 liters of crystalloids. So until blood is available, give adequate amount of crystalloids. That is 3 times the estimated blood loss. And give blood early. Mistake often committed in our labor room is too little of blood is given or too little of crystalloid given, and it is given too late. Replace as quickly as you can if the patient is shocked. Be guided by the patient's signs and response. So volume replacement, aggressive, I am repeating the word, aggressive fluid replacement should commence to catch up for any losses. Fluid of choices is crystalloids over colloids. And you can use either Ringer lactate or normal saline. Fluid input and output monitoring should also be carried. So loss of 1 liter of blood requires nearly 4 to 5 liters of crystalloids until cross-matched blood is available. Synthetic colloids are a warning in modern practice. You should hesitate to give colloids. You should not readily give hemaxil because crystalloids are better than colloids. No added benefits. The trials have shown that there is no added benefit of colloids over crystalloids. Even suggest possible worsening when administered too early. We know once I have seen after giving hemaxil, patient went into anaphylactic shock. But ideal choice is blood. So we must give blood for blood. One more important aspect of treatment of PPH is using anti-shock garment. The idea is driven from military, wherein military anti-shock trousers are given. They are used to increase venous return to the heart until definitive care could be given. The mechanism of action of mask, that is medical anti-shock trouser, is combined with compression of blood vessels, is believed to cause the movement of blood from the lower body to the brain, heart and lungs. So this is medical military anti-shock trouser, whereas pneumatic compression is used. However, we don't use mask because it's very cumbersome to use mask in our obstetric practice. For this, they have devised NASG, that means non-pneumatic anti-shock garment. It is very useful and it is used extensively in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is a forerunner in India to reduce maternal mortality because the healthcare system is geared up and the referral system is good and they readily use NASG. I think all of us should have NASG because it doesn't cost much. It may be expensive to the patient, but nothing is expensive than life of a mother. NASG, it costs 7,500 to 9,000 rupees. It contains various components for which I am going to show the video. So non-pneumatic anti-shock garment can be used in the medical management of the PPH before resorting to any surgical intervention. So non-pneumatic anti-shock garment, it is a low technology first aid device for stabilizing women suffering from hypovolemic shock secondary to obstetric hemorrhage. It is a lightweight, reusable, lower body compression garment made up of neoprene. And NASG, it is the mechanism of action is reversing shock and decreasing blood loss, thereby stabilizing the woman until definitive care is accessed. Most of the PPH can occur in rural area wherein the healthcare workers can use this and send the patient to tertiary care center so that the venous return is increased and patient is stable until she reaches the area. And we have seen many patients die before reaching the tertiary care center. Such can be avoided by using NASG. So Government of India must make it mandatory to use NASG in almost all PSCs, and definitely many lives can be saved. It increases the blood pressure by decreasing the vascular volume and increases the vascular resistance within the compressed region of the body. But it will not exert pressure sufficient to cause tissue ischemia. This can be seen in military anti-shock trouser. However, its NASG is a modified mast, so definitely it will not cause tissue ischemia. It only increases the venous return from the lower body. So NASG is recommended as a temporizing measure for PPH by WHO and FIGO. It aids transport of hemorrhaging women and from rural areas to urban treatment center or while awaiting procedures or surgery. Even it can be used in tertiary care center from shifting from labor room to the OT or from private nursing home to tertiary care center. Definitely you can use NASG and maintain the blood pressure till she reaches operation theater. So this is NASG. It is very much used in Africa as well as in our own state like Tamil Nadu. So here is a video. You can see how the non-pneumatic anti-shock garment is applied to the body.
Apply the NASG. First, place the NASG under the woman. The top of the NASG should be at the level of her lowest rib, and the row of yellow dots should be along her spine. Starting at the ankles, close segment number 1 tightly around each ankle. Make sure it is tight enough so that you can snap it and hear a sharp sound. Next, close segment number 2. Try to leave the woman's knee free so she can bend it.
Are you okay, madam?
Apply segment number 3, the thigh segment, in the same way as 1 and 2. Apply segment number 4, the pelvic segment, all around the woman at the level of the pubic bone. Place segment number 5, with the pressure ball, directly over the umbilicus. Then close the NASG with segment number 6. Although 2 people can more rapidly close the leg segments, only 1 person should close the pelvic and abdominal segments, 4, 5, and 6, to avoid applying too much pressure. All segments should be applied using as much strength as possible. However, do not close the abdominal segment so tightly that it restricts the woman's breathing.
Are you breathing okay?
If the source of bleeding appears to be uterine atony, administer uterotonic drugs and massage the uterus. The NASG stretches,
So NASG
allowing room
is
for your
very
hand.
much useful, especially if the woman is in shock. And most important is, suppose this patient needs surgery, only the segment number 4 can be opened and operated, keeping number 5, 6 and 1, 2 intact. So there also during surgery also we can maintain the blood pressure. Another interesting factor in controlling PPH is use of suction cannula, suction hemostatic device. It is claimed to be invented by 2 people. One is Panikkar and another is Samartha Ramadas. So there is a controversy. However, the mechanism is same. It is specially made stainless steel or plastic cannula of 12 mm in diameter and 25 centimeter in length, with multiple holes of 4 mm diameter at the distal 12 centimeter of the cannula. When introduced into the uterine cavity through the vagina to reach the fundus, cannula connected to suction apparatus and negative pressure of 700 mm of mercury is produced. Negative suction resulted in aspiration of all the blood collected in the uterine cavity. Quantity of blood sucked varied from 50 to 300 ml. And when collected blood and completely sucked out, the bleeding ceases. Suction, that is 600 to 700 millimeter of mercury, is maintained for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, you need to release the vacuum pressure. And the cannula, which is inserted inside, is taken out slowly after releasing of the suction after 20 to 30 minutes. So no further bleeding from the uterine cavity is noted according to the studies or by Mr. Ramdas and Panikkar, and uterus is well contracted. So I don't have any personal experience of using suction cannula because we use more of tamponade procedures like Bakri balloon. However, this also appears promising, and for the sake of completion, I am going to demonstrate a video wherein the suction cannula is used. One of the important side effect of using suction cannula is once suction is released, you may not be able to remove the cannula immediately because the entire tissue is sucked into the hole. So there may be temporary adhesions. You need to carefully release the adhesions from the cervix and from the uterine cavity. So that's why after releasing the suction, you have to wait for nearly 20 to 30 minutes so that the whatever tissue was sucked into the holes will be slowly released. So these are the cannula which are going to be inserted into the uterine cavity, and through the negative pressure, all the uterine tissue or cavity is sucked into the multiple holes. So this is the miniature picture of suction cannula. Here, relaxed uterus, you are going to insert the cannula into the uterine cavity, and the negative pressure is started. It has to be maintained not more than 600 to 7 millimeter of mercury, and within 2 to 3 minutes, full negative pressure is created, and uterus is supposed to be contracted and retracted. And in this video, you can see how it is inserted, and it looks promising but needs further studies.
SR cannula application for atonic PPH during vaginal delivery. Woman bleeding profusely. Vagina retracted with white blood speculum like this. 5 centimeters of anterior cervix is caught with the sponge holding forceps like this. Cannula inserted. Tip of the cannula should be at the level of fundus and should be fed bimanually. Nipple of the cannula should be connected to the suction machine through tubing. Negative pressure should be applied. A negative pressure of 650 millimeters mercury should be applied for 10 to 15 minutes. You can see complete cessation of bleeding within 4 minutes. Retracted well. Thank you.
So when all the uterotonics, crystalloids, infusion, blood transfusion, then bimanual compression, aortic compression, and use of NASG, if fails to control PPH, we have to resort to either tamponade procedures or we may have to go for surgical intervention, which will be covered by our friend Dr. Ashish Kubde. So in this presentation, I have highlighted on use of uterotonics, especially properly refrigerated uterotonics, and you have to identify hemorrhage. Don't underestimate the blood loss, or don't try to prolong the identification of hemorrhagic loss. And carbetocin is going to be a game changer in the near future. Hope Ferring Company sticks to its commitment of reducing the price of carbetocin. And I thank Dr. Maheshwari and Dr. Neha and USV for giving me an opportunity to speak on medical management of PPH. Now Dr. Ashish Kubde will speak on what next. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Virendra. Am I audible?
Yeah, yes, madam, you are audible.
Thank you, Dr. Virendra, for elaborate details of the medical management of PPH and emphasizing on that one has to be vigilant, predict, prevent, and be prepared to handle PPH. And even in very low risk cases, we have to be well prepared. Let us now understand what do we do next when medical management fails. I would request Dr. Ashish sir to please guide us. I would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Ashish. Dr. Ashish sir has graduated Government Medical College, Nagpur. He is a vaginal and laparoscopic surgeon, a robotic and gynec oncosurgeon. He is also director at 7-Star Hospital, Nagpur. He has demonstrated vaginal hysterectomy at European Congress of Gynec Minimal Invasive Surgery held at Ibiza, Spain. He is invited as operating faculty in various national conferences and workshops to demonstrate vaginal surgeries. He demonstrated various life-saving techniques in PPH, which we are going to see now. And he is attached to an NGO called Search Gadchiroli. Dr. Ashish sir, please take over the stage.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let me at the outset, let me thank Dr. Maheshwari, Dr. Neha, USP people for this invitation. I have presented the similar type of presentation in my own society, that is Nagpur OBGY Society, in last month. And routinely, since last about 12 years, I am doing the work of increasing awareness amongst gynecologists regarding the PPH. Because losing a patient and losing a mother, qualitative lot of difference between these two terminologies. If you lose a mother, you will lose the family. That neonate, it becomes orphan at the time of birth also, and her husband is going to remarry within 3 to 4 months, and the babies, they are having the miserable life for whole of their life. Let me start. Failed medical management, what next? A very important question. As Dr. Virendra said, at the outset, you raise the alarm and call for help. Help, help, and help. Call for help. It is the mainstay of the management, because you alone cannot manage the PPH. You always require the help. Consider, I am having a patient and she is now stuck up with postpartum hemorrhage. Now I call for the help. I call Dr. Virendra Kumar for help. He has agreed. But I know he will take minimum 15 to 20 minutes to come to my place. If I don't manage PPH actively, I am going to lose about 1.5 to 2 liters of the blood. As he has said, he has elaborated, even a simple trickle, don't take it easily, because this trickle may end in catastrophic loss. Therefore, what things I have to do before Dr. Virendra comes? And it comes the mainstay of my presentation today. I brings greetings from Nagpur. This is my hospital where I work. But before doing anything, let us have understanding regarding the blood supply of the uterus. As you know, blood supply, 3 sets, that is the ovarian artery. The fundus, about 30% of the uterine body gets supply from the ovarian artery. The main supply from the vaginal artery. And the third and most important in PPH, if there is trauma, if there is cervical trauma, if there is trauma to the forward axis, the vaginal artery supply. Because the caliber of vaginal artery is equal to the caliber of the uterine artery. Therefore, it is also very important. I came across with this very important article that written by Palacio from Argentina, and he has elaborated the lower uterine blood supply. He has divided the supply of the uterus and the vagina in three parts, three pedicles. That is the upper pedicle, the supplies from the uterine artery, which is a branch of internal iliac artery. The middle pedicle, which supplies around the area of the cervix, and mainly it is supplied by the cervical artery. Most of the time it is a branch of uterine artery, and 30% of time, 23% of time it is a branch of vaginal artery. And the lower pedicle, which is also very important, which supplies around the upper vault. It is supplied by the this vaginal artery. Most of the time it is a branch of uterine artery or internal iliac artery directly, or in 71% of time it is a branch of the pudendal artery. If you came across with the bleeding, you ask certain question to yourself: from where this bleeding is originated, why there is bleeding, how you can tackle it, how to avoid the bleeding, or can the knowledge of this vascular anatomy of the uterus and vagina be extended to this situation, and try to justify yourself, your action. We can extend further this knowledge of the vascular anatomy. Consider a case, patient taken for the evacuation for misabortion. The dilator cannula is inserted and there is torrential bleeding. Either the diagnosis of the scar ectopic or cervical ectopic. The option of vaginal uterine artery ligation is open to us. You can clamp or you can temporarily clamp the uterine artery. This is another scenario. You have done the cesarean section, fantastic cesarean, uneventful. But while at the cleaning of the vagina, you notice a continuous trickle and uterus getting relaxed intermittently. The option, the choice for the treatment available for us is either do the paracervical clamp or the vaginal uterine artery ligation. In both the situations, you came across with the word paracervical clamp. This is the original article by Professor Ramalingappa from KIMS Hubballi. That is the paracervical clamps for treatment of uncontrolled postpartum hemorrhage, a novel technique. He has advised to do the just apply the traumatic paracervical clamp in the level of at the level of the fornix, lateral fornix. It will occlude temporarily the uterine artery and the bleeding stops. In most of the cases, bleeding stops. He has also devised his own clamp, which is similar to the Pearce clamp, which your surgeon colleague used at the time of end-to-end anastomosis. Our own Piley sir, he has devised his own set of the clamps, which is similar to the sponge holder, but at the end, the end is having the core around 90-degree core. It looks like the sponge holder, and the length of this clamp is such that it applies, if you apply at the level of the lateral fornix, it will compress the uterine artery. I will demonstrate the video by Piley sir itself. There are two videos. In first video, he is demonstrating the clamp application in the model, and in second video, he is demonstrating in the patient. Both the videos are available on YouTube in the domain of social media, and anybody can access.
This video is to demonstrate the application of transvaginal uterine artery clamp to control bleeding from anatomic PPH. Imagine this is the model of the uterus with this representing the vagina, and these are the lips of the cervix. These are the two clamps that we need. These are two sponge holders, and these are the retractors. In case there is profuse bleeding from an anatomic uterus, you first expose the cervix by retractors like that, and then use a sponge holder to catch the anterior lip of the cervix and another one to catch the posterior lip of the cervix. Once the cervical canal is opened, we can take the right-angled transvaginal uterine artery clamp, insert one blade in the cervical canal and the other lateral to it, and let it go up till it is prevented from going up by the lateral fornix. At that point, push deliberately up a little more, and then clamp it. This will help to catch the uterine artery where it joins the side of the uterus. Repeat the same thing on the opposite side. One blade inside, the other laterally. Go up and then again deliberately push up a little more and then catch it. This way, both the uterine arteries are occluded and blood supply to the uterus will be cut off.
The application is very simple. You can apply both the clamps within 2 minutes. Now let us see on the patient itself.
The anterior and posterior vaginal walls are retracted with long bladed retractors. In the postpartum period, longer bladed retractors will be needed for this. Then the anterior and the posterior lips of the cervix are held with sponge holding forceps and are gently pulled down. Having the cervix pulled down, take the transvaginal uterine artery clamp, open the blades and insert it with one blade into the cervical canal and the other lateral to the cervix to reach the lateral fornix. Once it has reached the lateral fornix, its further advance will be resisted by the vaginal wall there. The operator deliberately pushes the open blades further up, pushing the soft tissue by about 1.5 centimeters, which will make it reach the level of the uterine artery where it joins the side of the uterus. The procedure is now repeated on the opposite side. If the lips of the cervix are not held in the midline, they can be readjusted. Vaginal wall is retracted further with the speculum or retractor, and the clamp is applied the same way on the opposite side, pushing it deliberately up when it has touched the lateral fornix for about 1.5 centimeters, so that when it is clamped tight, it will occlude the uterine artery where it joins the uterus on the side. The bleeding should stop immediately. Having confirmed that the bleeding is stopped, you can leave the clamps there for about 15 minutes, at the end of which the clamps may be released and either kept at the same level or taken out. If there is no further bleeding, no further action is required. But if there is further bleeding at this point, other measures like condom tamponade or Bakri balloon can be used.
I hope the videos are itself self-explanatory. And this is the first step before Virendra comes. I have uploaded and now waiting for the result. There is a chance, about 80% chance that I will get the result. Unfortunate. I am unfortunate that I don't get the result. Still, the bleeding is continued. Then what next? What next? This is also very important. And the answer is my second presentation. This is the first step we have done. That is the Pyllis clamp, application of Pyllis clamp. We have applied, no result. And the next step, we are going for the intrauterine balloon tamponade. This topic is very close to my heart. I am working on this propagation of this message since last almost 15 years. I am working. And I am very fortunate that I am having the friends like Dr. Virendra Kumar or Dr. Jaiprakash Patil, who has consented to present in the next session. And they are doing the work on this balloon tamponade extensively in their respective districts. Dr. Virendra Kumar is from Ballari district, Karnataka. Dr. Jaiprakash is from the Raichur district, northern Karnataka. And because of their propagation, their students, they are using extensively this balloon tamponade. And definitely there is very little postpartum hemorrhage death, PPH death in their district. And this is very commendable. These are certain case scenarios. Let me discuss. A patient had cesarean section at 6 p.m. at Periphery, about 100 kilometers from Nagpur. At 11 p.m., patient was found in pool of blood. Uterus was atonic. Uterine cavity was full of clots. The height of the uterus was above the umbilicus. She was shifted to my place at Nagpur. Balloon tried. Next day, patient was in DIC, full-blown DIC. She was bleeding from all the cavities except uterine cavity. Balloon was working. This is the second case. Again, had cesarean section at Lakandur. At the time of swabbing the vagina, the continuous trickle of blood was noted. Uterus was very well contracted, but there was definite trickle. Patient was shifted to Nagpur. Trickle was there. Condom balloon tamponade tried. Trickle stopped. This is the third case scenario. Patient had full-term normal delivery. Patient was discharged on the third day uneventfully. Came back with torrential bleeding on the day 8. Now, she is the obvious case of secondary PPH. Secondary PPH is mostly because of the infection, septicemia. Balloon was tried. It worked well. Patient was in ICU, septicemia corrected, and after on 5th day, patient was discharged. This is the fourth case scenario. Para 4 had vaginal delivery for the macerated stillborn fetus.
नहीं खेलो अभी जाओ सफाई करिए अभी 15 मिनट बाद कर लेना जो करना है
Patient had deranged coagulation profile. She had refractory PPH. Balloon was tried and it was successful. In all the 4 case scenarios, these are representative scenarios, but actual scenarios. In first case, there was atony. In second case, uterus was well contracted, but there was trickle. In third case, she was a patient of the secondary PPH, secondary to the infection, and fourth case, it was the coagulation problem. In all the 4 cases, the only common thing was the intrauterine tamponade. Now, in this presentation, when we talk about the intrauterine tamponade, it is common to the condom tamponade, that is the soft tamponade, or the rigid tamponade like the Bakry's balloon. The certain features of specific of the condom, I will discuss it separately. The use of the condom tamponade was recommended simultaneously in India and Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, she was the lady Saiba Akhtar in 2003, and in India, Professor Krishna Shivkar from JJ Hospital, they both recommended around the same period of 2003. In Bangladesh, they had very large series of about more than 10,000 patients, and they are using the condom tamponade on the red rubber catheter, and that worked very well. What is the most important advantage? The things are very easy to arrange, very economical. All ingredients for the condom tamponade are readily available. We get recovery time to improve the general condition of the patient, and always it should be tried before transporting the patient to the tertiary care center. Therefore, after failed medical treatment and before proceeding to the surgical intervention, you have to try 2 things. First is the paracervical clamp, which we have demonstrated, and second is the intrauterine balloon tamponade. If both the methods are combined, the success rate is around 90%, and 90% is a very good success rate. You can, in most of the time, you can avoid the unnecessary laparotomies for the surgical intervention, or you can save the life. Or even if you ship the patient, this time for the transportation, you can buy very much. The intrauterine tamponade, it is not new. Since ages, we are having the practice of the packing the uterine cavity. Now, instead of packing the cavity by ribbon gauze, we are packing it with the balloon. This gauze packing, it takes time. It is technically somewhat difficult because you have to pack it quite a long length of the pack you have to pack. Then all nooks and corners of the uterine cavity is not been taken care. And once it becomes wet, it becomes wet, then it loses the efficacy. It is time consuming also. Vis-a-vis balloon therapy, it is fast. It conforms well with all the interior architecture of the uterine cavity. Gauze may miss the spots. This tamponade, it is not going to miss anything. And the insertion is atraumatic and fast. And you can remove it in a very well manner. How does it acts? It acts by two things. First is the direct compression, and it triggers the extrinsic mechanism. Direct compression, it is very important. What is the pressure exerted? Let us understand the pressure dynamics. What is the pressure by which there is bleeding? It is equivalent to the systolic pressure of the patient. If systolic pressure, it is 100 millimeter of mercury, means patient is bleeding at the pressure of 100 millimeter of mercury. What is the pressure in the venous system? It is around 20 to 25 millimeter of mercury. What is the pressure exerted by this condom tamponade system or the Bakry's balloon system? The pressure applied is around 200 to 250 millimeter of mercury. Then one frequently asked question is, if you have done the cesarean section and now there is bleeding, you have introduced the tamponade, whether it will disrupt the suture line or not? Definitely the answer is no. Because the burst pressure of the suture is around 750 millimeter of the mercury. Therefore, it is very much above the pressure exerted by the balloon system. Then the second mechanism of coagulation, which is also very important, that is it triggers the extrinsic mechanism. What is the extrinsic mechanism? If any foreign body, it is in the contact with the bleeding surface, then what happens? The coagulum formation is exaggerated, and this is the extrinsic mechanism. Therefore, because of the physical, this closeness of this balloon, what happens? The coagulum is formed at the level of the bleeding vessel. The most important is by allowing the sufficient time for the resuscitation of the patient, which enables the severely anoxic uterine muscle to recover from the tissue anoxia and contact. This is very important. When you introduce the condom tamponade in the atonic patient, after some time the patient, there occurs the reoxygenation of the tissue and the tone of the uterus, it regains. Then what happens to the balloon? As the contractility of the uterus is increased, this soft balloon like the condom tamponade, this uterus tries to push that balloon in the vaginal canal. But this dynamicity is not available in the rigid balloon like the Bakry's balloon. If there occurs the intermittent relaxation, what happens? The whole assembly, it will get sucked inside the uterine cavity, and thus this condom tamponade is very dynamic. Material required, a simple condom, which is available in every nursing home who are doing the transvaginal scan. Disposable IV set, any tube like the Hollis catheter or the Nilitton's catheter, or if it is not available, red rubber catheter, not available suction cannula, or even if it is not available, you can use the Ryle's tube. Any tube you can use. then thread, artery forceps, then IV. These are the routinely required. How to assemble? It is very important and very easy also. You have to only roll the condom tamponade on any of the tubular structure, and at the level of the collar, at the level of the neck of the tamponade, this condom, you have to tie it. Your tie, it should not be that much tight that it will occlude the lumen, or it should not that much loose that it will not retain the fluid. Therefore, a word of caution that do not apply too much of the pressure while tying. This is the whole assembled system. You can test whether the lumen is working or not. Just introduce 10 cc of the fluid, and if it comes in the condom, means the lumen is working. When you can insert the condom tamponade, anytime, no time is bar. You can anytime introduce. Even in that patient of the secondary PPH, we introduce condom tamponade on the 7th day of the delivery. You can introduce anytime. How to introduce? Very easy. Patient in the lithotomy position. As you have seen the video of Filey sir, the same thing. Catch hold, do the speculum examination, catch hold the anterior lip of the cervix by the sponge holder. Assemble the balloon. Catch hold the tip of the balloon gently with the sponge holder. Introduce that sponge holder and go right up to the fundus. Your second non-dominant hand is encircling the fundus. It will get signal when you reach the fundus. Ask your assistant to run the fluid in through the tube. Always remember the amount of the fluid instilled should not be less than 500 cc. उसमें कंजूसी नहीं करना है आपको. Always it must be 500 cc. नहीं तो 100 cc हो गया, 200 cc हो गया, बस करो नहीं. You will not get the effect. Therefore, never stop before 500 cc. If you are if you are inserted the rigid balloon like the Bakri's balloon, then there is no need to pack the vagina. If you have applied the soft balloon like the condom tamponade, then it is mandatory to pack the vagina, or otherwise this condom tamponade is having the tendency to come out. Therefore, to prevent that coming out of the tamponade, you have to pack the vagina. It is very much mandatory. The medical management, it is continued. Now you got the help of Dr. Virendra Kumar. You can manage many more things. The bleeding has stopped. You can go for the replacement of the blood. You have seen the algorithm, how much blood to be replaced in the previous presentation. Then the next FAQ is for how long you have to keep the balloon in situ. 24 to 48 hours. Mostly 24 hours is sufficient. Next day morning, you have to remove. Then how to remove? My usual practice is, I first give the antiemetic. After 15-20 minutes of antiemetic, I give 250 microgram of copper plus intramuscular. And after half an hour of the cargo post, I remove the balloon. How to remove the balloon? Very important, very easy. Just open the knob of this Bakri balloon, or just remove the artery forceps or cut the knot of this condom tamponade. And it should be deflated gradually over 10 to 15 minutes. And we have done under the cover of the cargo post. Another FAQ is whether this condom, after instilling the 500 cc, whether it is going to break or not. Remember friends, every condom in the factory is tested by inflating the 20 liters of the gas. In another photograph, if you can compare the inflated balloon with the 1 liter mineral water bottle, means the capacity of the condom is about 200 liters. 200 liters. And you have instilled only the 500 cc. Therefore, 100% condom is not going to get ruptured. But if you want to be more secure, then use 2 condoms, one above the another, to be on the safer side. Successful results are shown by the other methods also, like the Sengstecken's tube or the Rush catheter or the Bakri's balloon. Bakri balloon, very important. It was devised by the Egyptian obstetrician Yusuf Bakri, 2001. It is made up of the latex and the capacity of 500 cc. As it is a rigid balloon, you can easily introduce it with the sponge holder, and then there is no need to pack the vagina. But according to me, the condom tamponade is having more efficacy than that of the Bakri's balloon. Uses of Bakri's balloon, uses of the uterine balloon other than the PPH. You can use in more situations, like you are doing the medical termination of pregnancy, MTP, there is bleeding. You can introduce the simple Foley's catheter, instill it with 20, 25, 30 cc, bleeding stops. You are doing the histoscopic septum resection, and now there is bleeding. How to stop it? Introduce the Foley's catheter, instill it with 10, 15, 20 cc, bleeding stops. You are dealing with the scar ectopic. Introduce the cannula, dilatation cannula, and now there is torrential bleeding. What to do? Introduce the balloon, introduce the Foley's catheter, instill it with 25 cc, apply the traction, bleeding will get automatically stopped. There are many more uses for this balloon tamper. Even all these world bodies like WHO, FIGO, RCOG, ACOG, they are having the recommendation to use the balloon for the first management in the low resource setting. B-Lynch and other compression sutures, their use is because they do not brace sutures to compress the uterus without compressing the major vessels. The advantage of B-Lynch procedure is that identification of specific blood vessel is not required. But before trying these B-Lynch type bracing sutures, this using the balloon tamponade is always a reasonable option. Therefore, if balloon tamponade fails, then go for the other activities like the stepwise devascularization or the bracing sutures. But before that, balloon is the primary line of the treatment. Giving birth should be about giving life, not giving up a life. Therefore, save the life of a mother, save a nation. Thank you.
I am thankful to you, sir, for excellent demonstration of various techniques to manage PPH if medical management fails, that is, before restoring to surgical management. You have very well demonstrated the importance of balloon tamponade, sir, and also the Piley clamp. Now, I would call Dr. Neha to please take queries from question box. Dr. Neha. Is Dr. Neha there? Dr. Neha? Sir, I will start taking questions then.
Yeah.
First question is carbetocin available in India?
No, madam, not yet available. But
Huh.
trials are going on in various parts of India. Belgaum is the one center where I graduated from. Dr. Shiv Prasad Gaudar and Dr. Bellad, they are a part of the study.
Okay.
It is not yet available in India.
Okay. How to order Panikkars cannula?
Panikkar cannula, actually I have given in the chat box his number. Dr. Panikkar from Kerala, you can take down his number 94473 51590. I have written in the chat box, madam, actually.
Okay, thank you, sir.
94473 51590.
Hello.
944. Okay.
So next question is, can we use routine suction machine for applying negative pressure
Hello.
for balloon? Suction machine for what? Dr. Asha?
Routine suction machine, ma'am. For this PPH, we have this suction catheters, no?
Yes. But you should watch for the gauze.
Okay.
The needle should be up to 650 to 700, not more than 700.
The size
Which you
of the
use
needle,
for your what we use for vacuum delivery, no, same thing can be used.
Okay.
Either hand pump or your suction cannula can also be used.
Name of the clamp used vaginally to occlude uterine artery and where it is available. I think you have given the number, Dr. Piley's number.
Yeah.
The Piley's clamp. So can you have the number again, please?
It is available with WellCare Surgical from Thrissur, and his number is, the contact person is Mr. Sham, 94472 67707. I repeat.
Type it in the chat box, sir, so that everybody can see it.
For how long should we apply Piley's clamp? And any risk of injury to ureter is there?
Ureter is only compress. It is not
ligated.
It does not get ligated.
Okay.
And for how long it is to be applied, sir?
20 to 30 minutes.
Another question is, for condom catheter, you have to cut the tip to drain the bleeding intrauterine?
Ma'am, drainage is not required. Really speaking, drainage is not required. Okay. And second thing, if you are using the Foley's catheter, the lumen of Foley's catheter is very small. And it will get occluded by the small clot also. Okay. If it gets occluded, it is of no use. Okay. Therefore, don't run behind the drainage.
Okay.
And thanks to Ashish sir, because of his motivation, myself and Dr. Jayaprakash Patil from Raichur, we started using Bakri balloon catheter in our medical college. In fact, Ballari Medical College, which is called as Vijayanagara Institute of Medical Sciences, is the forerunner of using the maximum number of Bakri balloon in preventing PPH. At any given time, we have minimum 3 to 4 Bakri balloons are there in our, and even our junior resident is able to insert Bakri balloon. And we have avoided many unnecessary hysterectomies. We have avoided even so many deaths. I can proudly say that because I've seen many people talking about the cost of the Bakri balloon, which is around 8,000 rupees. But we spend a lot of money on our unnecessary things. But whether it is used or not, you must keep one Bakri balloon in labor room. Not necessarily in medical colleges. Even private practitioners must keep Bakri balloon, and definitely it will save the life. And Dr. Ashish Kubde, Dr. Ashish Kubde jokingly says, you avoid buying one sari, you buy one Bakri balloon.
Okay. So we have finished with question. Dr. Neha, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
So please propose vote of thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I, on behalf of the Ratlam Auxiliary Society, I would like to thank our eminent speakers for their very informative and lively talks. It was a real academic feast, sir. Thank you, Dr. Viren Kumar, sir, and Dr. Ashish Kumble, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ashish, sir. Dr. Viren Kumar, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for taking out time from your precious schedule on Sunday, especially for all of us and imparting us with knowledge.
Okay.
I would also like to thank all the attendees for making this program a success. Hope to see you all again on coming Sunday, that is 21st of June. And I wholeheartedly thank USP Pharma for arranging this session. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
So we meet next Sunday, same time 11 a.m. for surgical management of PPH.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, madam.
I will demonstrate the stepwise devascularization and the bracing sutures, various types of bracing sutures. And the next part, me along with Dr. Jayaprakash Patil, he will present on the peripartum hysterectomy.
Okay, sir.
We are having good quality videos and we will like to share with you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam. Thank you. So bye, sir. Ashish, sir.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, sir.